Thank you for listening to the Following Films podcast. Today I'm joined by Antonia Bogdanovich. I had her on the show today to talk about her film Sleep No More. Sleep No More is a Los Angeles set neo-noir crime thriller, combining grit and atmospheric style, occasional comic desperation, and an inspired literary bent. As the 2014 film director Antonia Bogdanovich's debut feature neared its 10th anniversary, she wanted to revisit the film, a New York Times Critic pick, originally distributed as Phantom Halo, with the goal of releasing the version she originally envisioned. So as a tribute to her late father, the multi-hyphenate Peter Bogdanovich, who also executive produced, she set out to work to produce Sleep No More, the director's cut. I had a great time chatting with Antonia, and the film will be in theaters and on VOD this Friday, the 26th. Hope you enjoy the show. Thanks.
Hey there.
Hey, how are you today?
Sorry, I was a little late. I hope this isn't live.
No, not live. It'll just be the audio, just for recorded for later. So you're totally fine. You're good.
Cool. I was like rushing into the house.
Well, it gave me a couple extra minutes to revisit the opening of the film, actually, because it was something I wanted to check out before. Because first of all, this is the first time I've seen the film, was in preparation for this interview, and I really enjoyed it. I really loved the film. Yeah, oh, very, very much so. It took me back to my, while it didn't end up impacting my life and what I did with my career, I was a theater kid, and so to hear this much Shakespeare, have it used as sort of emotional chapters and throughout the story, and have it not feel like it was just being shoehorned in throughout it and actually felt natural. I was actually really worried when I first watched the opening of this, because you start with that quote and that image, which is absolutely beautiful. It's how can it possibly keep up with this? And I think it's just a wonderful opening for this film. Because I'm sorry to kind of go off on a tangent there, but can you talk a little bit about the film in its current state versus what it was? Because this is you revisiting it 10 years later.
Sure. Yeah, well, I think a couple things. And I mean, first of all, I want to say this. The film didn't really see the light of day 10 years ago. Okay. It had, there was some issues with the distributor, and it just really didn't see the light of day. And I thought that was it. And then my father passed away, and I thought about, well, actually, some people saw it, some producers, and there's a great film. Where can we see it? I'm like, you can't see it. Oh, well, can we put it back out? Sure. And then I thought, well, if we're going to put it back out, I need to cut it. There were some things I wanted to change. So the ending's a little different.
Okay.
It's shortened, and it's a little less. It's just, I said this earlier when I was kind of speaking about to my producers. Basically, when you change the editing even a little bit, it changes the emotion. So the ending, it has some snips. It has some, the scene, from the house onward. Mm-hmm. And then we had a couple sequences that I didn't think was necessary. I never really liked them. And then we cut one scene from the middle of the film and rearranged, kind of restructured some of the, I think the second act, and maybe a little bit of the first act.
It's pretty incredible how changing the context of the scene by where it appears and how it can impact it and the original idea of it, because the information the audience has we don't have what you have in your head as the writer, as the filmmaker, as the actor in the piece. So it's just that context of how it ends up being delivered in the final version of it is so important. And it must be difficult, I would imagine, while you're in the middle of it, to actually have that sort of those new eyes that are required when you're first editing a film. Did coming back to it 10 years later help you to trim down some of those ends and move things around and recontextualize some of the pieces?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you have much more objectivity. I watched it. We did a director's cut screening at Rome International Film Festival in Georgia, Rome, Georgia.
Yes.
And I saw it for the first time in a very long time, and I said, well, this movie works. I think because of the distribution and because of just the way things were going in 2015, 2015 really when it came out. Did the festival in 2014. It just wasn't, streaming was starting to become really big. But there weren't all these streaming platforms. There just weren't. Theaters were hurting, but it was really the only way you could still get me. It was a very different time. So I was like, I think as an artist, we think in extremes. So because nobody saw the movie, not a lot of people saw it really, I just felt like it was, I had failed. I had failed to get it out, failed my audience, failed as a filmmaker because I didn't get it out, and that's what we want. We make movies so people can watch them. That's the most enjoyable part. Anyway, so I was very happy to see it play well at that festival after all that time. And I've changed a lot, I've lost both my parents. I had already lost my mother, who was a great inspiration to me. Her name was Polly Platt.
Yeah.
She'd only passed away a few years before, and then losing my dad. So a lot, you just have a different perspective.
Oh,
right.
Absolutely. I look at the things that I wrote and created 10 years ago, and I absolutely want to go back and hack them up and change them. And almost, if there was something that was actually good within those. And the thing is with this, you do have a really good film that absolutely works. And I think at the end of the day, you have to make a film that you want to watch, and then other people will want to watch it. And the bar for success on that, you want as many people to see it as possible, but you've made a film here that just automatically there will be people that will be precluded from it, that won't necessarily want to see an adult-minded film like this. But there's an audience that is so underserved for a film like this, that is thoughtful and considerate, and it does not take the obvious road through this. And it's heartbreaking and charming and beautiful and tragic, and just something that I think people that even if this isn't your experience, I think you can relate a lot to this. This wasn't my dad, but there were elements of my dad that I could see in here. This is not me as a son, but I can see me as a father in here at times, in parts that I don't like. That there's an uncomfortable mirror about this film.
Well, it's interesting because one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie is when Beckett comes home late and Warren's there, and he says, "You're just a thief, sticking your hands into." I'm misquoting my own writing. Sticking your hands into the pockets of the world, or something, and then Luke's response is so spot on. I think we only did a couple takes, and he turns his head and he says, "It's what you taught me." That is an argument that me and my mother had. Like, she would encourage me to do something, or I would be influenced by what she was doing, and I would do something different, but it was my own, and she would find a way to pretend like it was my idea and I had not done it well. It was a very complex, twisted relationship, but that fight is like, I could have picked it from the things that my mother and me used to really battle about.
Well, and that's it. And I think that's the entry point. Family is complicated. Those relationships between fathers and sons and daughters and mothers and whatever the combination happens to be, it's never easy. And the things that you want to try to avoid in your parents, they're inevitably within you. The things that you want to emulate are a struggle to emulate. And so it's just this complicated balance. And I think you allow for these really three-dimensional, fully filled characters. Nobody's a caricature here. Nobody's one note in this film, which is so important for a story like this.
Well, that means a lot to me to hear that. That means a lot.
Well, I think that you could easily make the dad in this the villain, and he is in many ways. He's clearly, but there's a story to him. What happened to him? How did he end up in this situation? What were the cards that he was dealt? And I think this is a film that's really about listening a lot more than it is about the the speaking. And I think that that's probably more salient today than it was 10 years ago when you made this thing.
That's interesting that you say that. What do you mean by that about listening?
So when I think of listening we often think of listening as just simply the paying attention to the person that's speaking to you. And are you actively listening? Are you engaged with the words that they're saying? Are you actually taking the time to think about what's going on beneath those words? What's going on? How are the things that you're doing impacting others? Then what are the actions that you're taking when you're waiting, when you really desperately want to be heard? Are you actually speaking your truth in those moments? And I think that this is a pretty complicated and layered film in that these people are not just coming at these situations from one angle, yet they have predispositions that cause them to act in really horrible ways that are just going to spiral out of control and have really negative consequences. But I think that this is something that's avoidable. That is the tragedy of this. If we were listening to one another, if the family was actually not only engaged with the words that other people are saying, but the word, what you're saying, and if you're actually saying what you mean in that moment, because a lot of times it's reactionary. That's kind of how I think about it. I'm not sure if that's a good read on the film or not, but that's how I interpreted it.
No, it absolutely is, because when you were explaining what you meant, I was thinking about a moment where Beckett is being a father to Sam, and then suddenly Beckett starts getting into trouble, and he's like, "You bought a Bentley?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he's like, "We don't even have groceries." And, Beckett's like, "Hold on, I got a plan. I'm going to do this. And then, we can get back to taking care of each other." And meanwhile, the father is just like, where can I get my next paycheck so I can gamble or drink? And, and he's surviving by any means necessary. He's given up on his dreams. So yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And talk about the casting of this, because this really is, above all else, this is a performance piece. This is something that you have so many moving parts in this. There's a lot of really juicy characters here. And if you miscast any one of these, the whole thing falls apart, because they all are dependent on one another. It's not like there's just this one role that you can hang your hat on and the whole movie will work. You can have these lesser than performances. I think that if you really get any one of these wrong, the whole movie doesn't work.
Absolutely. Well, the nice thing is I had written a short that this kind of the inspiration for the whole feature was based on a short. And I have a longtime friend, Sean Valla. He's an editor. He's a visual effects editor as well. And he's like, "Oh, I got the perfect kid, Shakespearean street performer, pickpocket, his brother pickpocket." He says his name's Thomas Sangster and he's here shooting a movie. So I went to lunch with some of the cast, and I met Thomas, and I said, "I want you to do the short." And I think I flew him back out a couple months later. And so then when I wrote the feature a few months, a year or two later, I asked him to star. So he was the first person I cast. And it was funny when I saw Thomas and I looked him up, I'm like, it's almost like I wrote it for him, not knowing he's exactly what I was picturing in my head. I hadn't really seen him since Love Actually, because he did Game of Thrones right after we shot. He literally did Game of Thrones right after we shot the movie, the feature. So then, we offered it to Tobin Bell. He loved the script. I was over the moon. Believe it or not, Sebastian Roche, he went on tape. And when I saw the tape, I'm like, he's auditioning? I was like, he has the part. He completely embodied, he understood that character. It came through in the audition. The best story I could tell about, also I used to be an actress, is Luke Klein came in. He'd done some television. He was extremely talented. I did not know him at the time. I had not seen his work. He comes in, he probably had a first round, and it was his second audition with me. And he comes in and he does, one scene, and he does it brilliantly. And then I had him do a Shakespeare like the Shakespeare that he does on the promenade. And he gets up on a little thing that he brought, like a little pedestal, and he starts doing the Shakespeare, and he's saying all the wrong lines, but he's not missing a beat. And I was like, of course, it's not about the lines. He was still delivering it like Shakespeare. Of course, he was getting some of the lines. And I was like, I was so impressed with the fact that he didn't miss a beat, whether he knew he was doing the lines wrong or not. He didn't care. He was in it, and he was perfect for the role. And of course, I had no idea how talented he was until he started doing some of these extremely emotional scenes where he's like, he's got his process. I don't want to give it away, but deeply talented actor.
Well,
deeply talented.
I think you nailed something there. That's always been something that's fascinating about Shakespeare for me personally. And it's in the performance of it, where when you read it, the language is so dense that it's difficult to get it all in, but you see it performed and it just clicks. The emotional truth of it comes out, and the words are, while incredibly important, that in my absorbing it, they're almost secondary, that it is the performance that's coming through. And it is that truth that people are able to speak with the rhythm of it and with that setting and with how it's being told. And it's just something that is, I know that those words mean so much, but I completely see getting lost in that language and still being able to convey it.
Right. Absolutely. And then Jordan Dunn, he auditioned, and I really saw that part very comedic. I wanted that to be I wanted him to be the comic relief in the show and in the movie, and like kind of clueless and a little bit sheltered, but like, yes, and he was perfect. And those two had chemistry. The two boys had a lot of chemistry, and they actually really got along, between takes. They were buddies right away. And then, Benga, huge fan of The Wire. He was a last minute, I cast him last minute. I was like, I'm such a huge fan of The Wire, and I was so obsessed with all those actors when I watched it in 2001, live, all the way to like the fifth. I think it had the other 6 seasons. So I knew exactly who he was. I was just honored to have somebody from that show. And then, and then Rebecca, she was incredible. I mean, she was great with Ashley Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to really slap you. Like, can I really slap him? I'm like, hell yes, you can. I want you to really slap him, within reason. Of course, the director's going to want it to be as authentic as possible. And she was great, beautiful, funny. She was funny. She got the part. And then she even did some, she in that scene with the watermelon, she came up with some stuff on her own, like picking up the knife and said, I think that was her line. Want a watermelon? I think that wasn't even in the script. And everybody on the set laughed. She was a joy to work with, and she just went with it, and she was perfect. I wanted somebody that looks like a movie star who's living in LA. There's so many of those that came here that didn't make it, that are beautiful, that are interesting, and I come from that, I remember meeting the guy it made a big impact in my life. The guy who was the lead in Harold and Maude.
Oh, God, that's one of my favorites. Yeah.
I saw him really young. And for some reason, it probably hadn't just come out. But when I saw him later, I don't know why this actor comes to mind as like these iconic performances and actors that are still in Los Angeles, and I'd see them at parties or, and just see like, wow, that guy was in Harold and Maude, So yeah.
It's the age that you see things at. For me, I think it is, because like Harold and Maude, I saw that when I was, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years old, something like the perfect movie to see at that age. That's one of those, that's when a movie, it isn't it's magic at that point. Even with your background and your family, there's a point where it seems otherworldly. There's people that actually made those things. This, it's when you meet people whose work you respect, they're not peers when you're at a certain age, but then when you all are kind of working at the same level and working at the same age, it feels more like you get it and you understand it. But there's a certain thing, when I interview people, when I meet people that are, they're the things that made the things that I saw when I was a kid, I just get more nervous than I could imagine. And it's not about like fame or accolades or anything like that. It's just, what did that mean to me when I was 8 years old? And then that's who I become when I'm engaging with that person.
Well, I got the opportunity to meet Francis Ford Coppola for the first time, which
oh my God,
because my mother was friends with him.
Mm-hmm.
They were pretty close friends. He used to call the house, and my father and him knew each other from the early. I mean, they knew each other, and Francis has a full Hollywood family. Everybody in his family is somehow connected, but I had never met him, and I was in Rome, Georgia, and he was finishing his film really close by. And somebody said, "Do you want to meet him? We got it stuff." I'm like, "Yeah." And so,
of course,
he kept looking over at me, and I'm taking pictures, and I'm like, "I have to introduce myself." And I told him that I was, who my name and who my parents were. And he starts talking about my dad, and I wanted to just say to him, "Can we talk about Apocalypse Now?" Because I saw that movie without my father. My
Mm-hmm.
father did not show me that movie. That was a movie of my youth. I was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I'd grown up watching old Marlon Brando movies. So to see Marlon at that age with that performance, but we didn't do that. And I had to, humor him with Peter, of course, and be polite and gracious. But I just wanted to be I just wanted to know everything about Apocalypse Now. And I owned the director's cut. But, I had to be, we had to talk about, and we had a brief moment, and he was very sweet.
That is the nice thing when you do get to engage with those people, because you get to re-engage with that former non-jaded version of yourself and get to say, oh, I remember when I was wide-eyed about this stuff, and the cynicism just goes away and it evaporates for some reason. For me, it does, at least for the most part, when I get to engage with those things. And that's why all those are back there. And it's just, I get to go back and look through those and see, even if I'm not going to watch, there's probably things back there that I won't watch for the rest of my life, but I get to every once in a while go by and look at it. I haven't watched Harold and Maude in 5 years probably, but I think about it every time I look through certain discs and I see it over there, and it's worth it to just re-engage with those memories. And I think you have a film that could do that. I imagine that with this, if I were to have found this movie when I was 13, 14 years old, this is just something that and it's not that I felt like it was something that was beneath me by any means, but I could imagine this movie being so impactful to somebody that is coming of age. I have a 14-year-old son, and that's what made me think of it, that I really want to share this film with him. I want him to watch him on his own without me so that he can, kind of figure that out. But just as a, hey, by the way, this is something I think you should see and think about.
Well, that means a lot, because my audience is usually teens. I write with them in mind. And when I was lucky enough to see it with a big audience and at the Austin Film Festival, the premiere, there were at least 50 kids between the teenagers and young adults that were loved it.
Good.
And I don't think it reached them because it's harder, especially if you don't get the distribution. But I definitely write for that audience. And a lot of my characters in all my screenplays are teens or young adults. But you know what? I wanted to talk about the opening, because you said something about the opening.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the opening, it's because it's the way that you start the film. You have this line from Macbeth that's opening it up. It's black and white, and you have these, bloody footsteps that are going, and it's such a powerful image. And the thing that happens when I see a film that starts like that, I oftentimes will get nervous, because there's a trajectory that you have to keep up with at that point. It's like, oh, did they throw everything out that they had in this one moment? Was this every idea kind of thing, where can they pull this off? And you did, and you absolutely did. And that's why I wanted to go back to it, to kind of revisit it in the context of the whole film, to see, just to kind of take it on its own. But it was one of those things that just grabbed me right away when that particular line, it can be I think it's misused often, and I think that it's used really well here.
Well, unfortunately, when I chose it, I don't think I realized how much that the line from Macbeth, just so I can call for myself. One, that's one of my favorite plays.
Yeah.
It was like dark. I love dark. And this is also Sleep No More is line from Macbeth.
Yep.
And my father wanted that title from the very beginning. He would always say, great film, terrible title. Which is basically what Warren would have said. You know, you're good, but when I was your age, I was better. I mean, that's how I grew up with my parents. They have a high standard, and I really appreciate that. So that I chose that because it's about a failing actor. It's about a guy that was successful at one time. And unfortunately, I saw that. I lived through that with my own father, and it's extremely painful. I never wanted to see my father where he'd come from in the films to be where he was at in the 80s and 90s. 85 was fine. He directed Mask, but then there was a lot of controversy about that. But I really can identify with a father a character like that. So a poor player, because no matter what would happen to my dad or even me, I realize now I'm still going to be a filmmaker. Like, even if I'm not making films. And so the bloody footprints, it's a foreshadowing. I mean,
of course. Yeah.
So, anyways, and just like that idea of escaping, you get the film. Thank God. I was really worried that I wasn't clear enough. So I feel like this conversation makes me feel great. And this is why we want to talk to people that, like, okay, I wasn't that esoteric. I wasn't that vague, I didn't. Yeah.
And I don't think the lifting is that heavy. You give enough room for people to project themselves into this and to see stories that are not their own, but feel like it's a familiar story, which is really important in a story like this.
Right.
And it is something that I don't think it's ambiguous at all. I think that this is if you're paying attention, it's very clear. And I mean, but you could watch this movie in several different ways. I think you could just kind of not tune out per se, but this is something that you could be less dialed into every moment. You don't have to have the background to spend a lot of time talking about Shakespeare. You don't have to know those plays to know what each one of those beats are about in those moments. In fact, you go into Pig Latin at one point in the middle of Shakespeare, and it works. So yeah, I think that it is high-minded without being condescending, which is really hard to pull off. So congratulations. You got one of the good ones here. So.
Well, I've always thought of myself as, like, because of how I grew up, I was forced to be high-minded, right? Like, read these 5 books in 5th grade, like, Steinbeck and, J.D. Salinger, these books that I was reading very young. I mean, I had to read them again to understand them, but it's also like, I'm down to earth. Like, I can pretty much talk to anybody. So I think I'm glad that kind of, that you can view the film that way, that you don't have to get every single thing. And, I took a lot from Henry IV, Part 2, if I can recall.
Yes, you did. I have that on my notes. So, yeah.
Right. Shakespeare. It's about, like, Beckett is, and to a certain extent, Samuel, they're playing with the idea of Falstaff, right?
Right.
Like, am I, do I need to be this person to steal this? Anyways.
Well, that's the offense line, isn't it?
Right.
That's what that's really about. And that's really about the idea of, even there's this part of me when I meet people like yourself, I have this instinctive reaction to not talk about your parents, to not talk about your family, because I just don't want to insult your work by just saying, hey, I want to talk about this thing. But this is such a story that it is talking about your family life, because this is such a clearly personal film that is about family and about that idea of how our own individual ambitions can ruin our families and, multiple generations, and all the things all the plays that you go through, all the, when you're going through all your kings here, when you're going through your Macbeth and you're going through Richard III and Henry IV, and you're going through all these things, these are all really essentially, while they're these big power grab stories, they're kind of about fucked up families more than anything else in the end. And
well,
so,
they are.
yeah.
They are. And it's interesting because my parents didn't make me read Shakespeare. That wasn't required. I found Shakespeare all on my own. I mean, there was no way my father was going to take me to a play in Los Angeles that was Shakespeare. He would only the Brits can do that. He would, if we lived in London, yes, but there was no way he was going to take me to an American production. No offense. That's how my father was. So I discovered Shakespeare when I was about 15 or 16. I completely related to him.
What was your entry point? Just out of curiosity,
I think it was definitely Romeo and Juliet.
Okay.
But then it was The Tempest, because I watched actually John Cassavetes. I watched The Tempest at a very young age. And then my Henry V, that was probably very early. I read that very early on. And Richard III. And then, of course, Hamlet is something that you have to look at over and over to really understand, I think. It's a very complex play.
I aspire to understand it one day. Haven't gotten there yet. So.
Exactly. And hence why I kind of left him out, because I think, somebody said, the ending of your play or your film, I don't want to give it away. So let's not give it away. But yeah, I mean, so I can't credit my family with introducing me to Shakespeare. That's something I completely on my own.
Yeah, it was the comedies were the way in for me. Midsummer. It was it was seeing that performed in America. I went to the Globe Theater. My mom's from England. I've seen Shakespeare performed in the real place, but it was legitimately little community theater. Seeing those performances, it just broke me open. Seeing people that I knew from the neighborhood getting up on that stage and doing that thing and saying these words. It was this transformative thing that really just, I'm always looking for that moment. I'm trying to get back. Every film I watch, every play I go to, I just want to get back to a black box theater where I see an actor delivering a line and finding a connection to that. That's really what I want to, that's why I do this to this day still. It's just that thing. That's the dragon I've been chasing since I was, 13, 14 years old, something like that.
Believe me, I understand. I think that's why I want to be on a movie set all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of us, even though we're really stressed out and we're running around and it's long hours, we're all just a bunch of kids playing on a playground. I mean, I know it sounds very basic, but I think I understand film sets quite well, since I was on one when I was very little and it was fun. It was great. But even when I was older and I was working, I'm like, there's still something I was working on a memoir for a while called 298 miles from the circus tent, because I lived outside of Los Angeles for 17 years, and it was very difficult, because I was like, I consider film as it's a circus. There's a circus, especially to a film set, and it doesn't last forever, right? It's 2-3 months, 6 months if you're lucky, but it's really like no other place. And most people there want to be there. Yeah. Most people there really want to be there, and they like that energy that is given off with, we're just creating make-believe. We're just creating magic. And we all know we're creating magic. No matter who, the grip, all the way, the electrician, everybody, we all know that we're doing something great,
Oh, there are easier ways to make more money that will be less stressful. There is a deep psychosis in all of us that are attracted to that world, that if you have ever run off and done summer stock for no money for 4 months and thrown everything away in your life, then you get that. And it's just to be engaged in that moment with like-minded people. You find your tribe, you find your people that get that. You don't have to do any translating. You're right. And it is everybody. It's not just the actors, and most people that work in the film industry and in the entertainment industry, they are working class people that could have a much different careers if they chose to. And, if you're an electrician you can make a very good living doing it, but if you were working on AC, in this time of year, you'd probably make a better living and be more consistent. You wouldn't have to worry about a strike. So.
And actually the job is a lot more simple because some of the things the electricians have to do and what
oh my
they
God.
have to hire and, I want that to light up. Well, that's like not a working light, and you're like, well, make it a working light. I've seen directors do that on bigger budget movies. Yeah. Me, on the other hand, I told my DP with that, speaking of the beginning shot, we get there and it's a night shot, right? Of course, we know it's a night shot. And I'm like, okay, I want to light the whole street. And he walks down the middle of the street. I want each house to light up. So he's like creating light as he wants. And like my DP laughed at me and I knew like he was laughing at me. And I go, what? He goes, we have 2 electricians and 2 grips. He's like, we don't have any forklifts and we don't have any 10Ks or 12Ks. And of course I've worked on movies with that equipment, many movies. And I go, it was so funny. I go, oh yeah. Like I knew that we didn't have a big lighting package. I mean, it was like, I just wanted it. And I was actually really sad because I had thought about that shot for so long. But I mean, maybe I didn't know we only had 2 electricians because, they worked their asses off. So I didn't I was like, we only have 2? What? But yeah, of course I knew the forklifts alone, And we didn't even light the street, honestly. I think we just did source light. Crazy.
But it's still one of the most evocative shots in the film. It's still beautiful. It might not be what you wanted it to be. And you have that, to kind of close that loop on the, if you've ever read Don Quixote, in the opening of it, Cervantes talks about this is kind of a child that is flawed and that it's, this thing that is a masterpiece. Everybody agrees this is pretty much a perfect work, but he sees it as a flawed child. It's this thing that it has warts and it has rough edges on it. And, you see this, you made this, and you think about the shot that could have been, but really you've made a truly beautiful shot that you should be proud of.
Oh, thank you. You're making my year.
Don't worry about it. No, this was, and I know we've gone long. I'm sorry for that, but okay.
It's hard, because I can say this to any listener, it's so hard to get a movie made. And like, it's a gift to put this movie back out because for me to be reminded that I'm supposed to be making movies is very important to a person that isn't able to make a movie when they snap their fingers. And, you just got to keep trudging. I mean, 3 weeks before my mother died, she said I was going to make it. She never said anything like that. She was very critical and very negative about me being a film director for a lot of reasons, one of which her and my father didn't get along very well. And it was an up and down, but she said, you're going to make it. She's like, because you have more drive than I did. I was like, that's impossible. But what she did say is don't ever give up. And that was in 2011. And then my father kept telling me that over and over and over. So you're basically saying it in a different kind of way because, it means a lot. Thank you for saying these, because I haven't talked to anybody who's watched my film in a long time.
Well, keep in mind, I'm a greedy American consumer. I want more movies from you. This is it. I want to see more work by you. I don't want it to be another 10 years before the next thing comes down the pike, whatever that story is that you want to tell. I just hope that there will be another one because I want to see more stuff.
No, I can talk briefly. I have a movie that I'm extremely excited about.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Speaking of generational stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's called The Spectacular Brink of Life. And my partner wrote it. His name's Josh Russell. And we've been working on a new draft for about a year and a half. I've been developing it with him. He had written the script a while ago and kind of had it set aside. And he's like, I keep thinking of you for this movie. And so it's about a Catholic boarding school for child geniuses. And the protagonist has found the mathematical equation for heaven and outer space. And he's going to build 2 test rockets and a third one and go up himself and find heaven. So it's the story of that. And there's a love triangle. And it's very, I would say, you know, it has a little bit of Wes Anderson in it. It has a little bit of definitely, I would say, Brick, you know, like those influences, but we'll make it our own, you know. It's a great kind of, I think it could be any age could watch this film, you know, from 12 to 10 all the way up. It's PG. It really is.
I love the idea though. I that's brilliant. I absolutely love that idea. That's clearly something I've never seen before.
Yeah, so, that's what I was excited about when I read it. I was like, oh, I have to make this movie. Like, have to make this movie.
Is that something, the scale of that? I could imagine that being a very large or something that's just very esoteric and you have 2 people in a room talking about something. So, or you're going to try to find a balance in between the two of them?
No, it's, I mean, they build the rockets.
Okay.
They go to, there's there's at least 20 minutes in outer space here. You know, 20 minutes of the movie will take place in outer space. Oh no, it's a bigger scale movie, but we're still going to like, I love independent filmmaking.
So do I.
And I think that right now we need to make more independent. I mean, American Fiction, loved it. It did well.
Yeah,
it got
from my hometown, went to my wife's high school, the writer of that. Yeah.
His acceptance speech was so inspirational.
Yeah.
He has no idea how much that impacted all the filmmakers when he said it, you know?
Pretty incredible.
So yeah, I mean, it won't be a huge budget. You know, me and my partner, my producing partner, I'm going to direct it. Him and I both would like to do this within reason, so we can, you know, put, you know, not make it so there's a profit there. You know, we don't have to make it for 100 million. No way, we really don't.
You want to get another at bat. You want to be able to do it again and do something that's fiscally responsible. And if you can tell a story that has that kind of, I think there's a lot of ways you can make a movie on scale that doesn't have to be $100 million. There are ways to do it.
And you have CGI and you have green screens, and now there's this new thing called the volume, which I'm very interested in.
Yeah, I was just at Cinegear looking at that a couple months ago, like a month and a half ago. Yeah, it's really interesting. So where they're able to do a 360 degree immersive LCD screen essentially, so you can completely create environments. So it's really cool.
Right. I mean, you're saving a lot of money on building sets, and also like if they're far enough away, you can have extras in the background. I've seen that. So I'm going to save money. Extras can cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Especially on a lower budget film. I mean, I wanted 10 times more extras in those scenes on the promenade. I was supposed to have 100 people there. But it works, right? Because of the way I shot it. But I wanted at least 50 to 100 people. So he could pickpocket through I had to work with what I had. And it taught me to be, you know, very, you know, don't be disappointed, work with what you have. Like, you know, it's for the moment. I was like, where's all my extras? They're like, this is all we could afford. Okay.
I think almost everything you need to know about independent film you can learn through Roger Corman. And he once said that he shot the Roman Empire with 4 extras and a bush. So, I mean, you can do it. You can figure out a way. You just have to be very creative. And it's not what you show, it's what you're not showing. So when you're focused in on that bush at the right place, we can project into what else is around it. If we're saying it's this other thing, we don't know that you're at a parking lot off of the back lot. So. Right.
I know. It's so fun. I love it.
Yeah. But thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really do appreciate it. And congratulations on the film. It's really exciting. I'm glad there's another one coming down the pike soon I'm a fan. So yes,
thank you so much. I so appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you again.
I'm going to hold you to that.
No, first, of course. It's kind of how I'm built. I'm very loyal. And I don't forget people who appreciate. I've seen it before. I mean, I've seen, I've seen actors that, like, I met Owen Wilson when he was not Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
We were hanging out. I loved him. So if he sees me again, he's going to give me a hug. You know what I mean? Like, we have to remember who we were, and no matter how successful we get, Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. And I can feel, I actually think you're somebody, just based on this little conversation, I don't feel like you're blowing smoke. You feel like somebody that's genuine.
I can't even, I'm not very good at bullshit. which sometimes my actors appreciate, but I have finesse. I can finesse them. But I'll leave you with this. I remember Sebastian, like, we were shooting the last scene, Sebastian Roche, and he's like, kept trying to tell me how his character could have this moment where he was redeemed. He would have his redemption. And he, I was like placating him because, you don't want to, this is just the way I work with actors and the way I've been taught, and just my instincts with them.
Yeah.
He was just like, and I'm trying to like shoot this incredibly complicated scene over 2 days. Finally, I looked at him because he'd said it like 5 times. I go, you have no redemption. Your character is not redeemed. The only redemption you have is when you step in front of that moment. And I don't want to give it away because I want people to see the movie. That's your moment, but it's not, it's just kind of instinct. You don't like volunteer to be a hero at that moment. That's the only redemption you got. Okay. Sorry, but you don't get it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference with being forthright and being an asshole. You don't strike me as an asshole. So
No. I don't. I really don't. I don't want to be an asshole, and I love my crew. And I came from that. I was a PA. I even helped. I had an electrician friend on a movie. Like, I'd stay after to hang out with him, and I'd be, wrapping cable. He taught me how to wrap cable, and, got lunches and cigarettes and lighters and, dry cleaning.
It's a pretty thankless job, but it is.
I was told you have to start at the bottom, though. Start at the bottom. I'm like, okay. It's good. It builds a lot of character. I didn't expect to have like a good job right away, right out the gate. No way, you can't.
No, that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help the person that gave you that job. You assume that everybody there is looking at you sideways. How did you get here if you're given something before you've earned it? And you want to be somebody that shows up, and you got there on your own merit. And clearly you have.
Yeah, no, I had to work very hard. It
shows. But congratulations, and thank you
so
again.
I look forward to talking to you again, and thanks so much for everything you said. It means a lot. Really
good.
Does.
Well, no, thank you. I appreciate it. It was great to meet you.
You too.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.